Hey everyone, welcome to the KE Report, a company update from Heliostar Metals, following up on some drill results from the La Colorada Mine. I do want to focus everybody to that last interview that I had with Heliostar Metals, where we recap the technical reports on 3 of the projects in Mexico that the company is moving forward into, let's say, restarting and continuing mining. One of those projects being this La Colorada mine, where production was restarted in January of this year. I am chatting again with Charles Funk, President and CEO of Heliostar Metals. Heliostar is traded on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol HSTR, on the OTCQX under the symbol HSTXF, and the Frankfurt Exchange RGG1. Now, Charles, in this news release from yesterday, January 30th, a lot of drill results here. 23 holes reported, all from this Creston pit within the La Colorada mine. Take us through initially these results and, again, the overall goals here of what this drill program is trying to prove.
Yeah, thanks, Corey. So, in the big picture, we returned La Colorada into production a few weeks ago at the beginning of January, and our plan later this year is to expand. And the bulk of that expansion comes from cutting back or expanding the Creston pit. There's an over 300,000 ounce reserve with most of the mineralization at the bottom. And so that means you've got to remove all the material on the side to get down to that. And that's where the bulk of the cost of restarting the Creston pit comes from. But one of the things we recognized when we were reviewing the purchase of the asset was that there was very little to no drilling and plenty of reasons to believe there could be more gold shallowly. And so that's what the bulk of these results are from, in that we stepped out around the edges of the pit in material considered to be waste. And our view was if it's above the cutoff grade of the deposit, well, then it's going to have an outsized impact on the economics. And some results we put out late last year and these results today demonstrate a very sort of significant set of results, maybe higher grade than we were expecting. That means more shallow ounces, which we think will improve the economics and total gold production from expanding La Colorada.
Let's talk about the resource then. In the probable category, you have a table within the news release, but as you said, this Creston pit, a little over 300,000 ounces of gold grade of 0.76 grams per ton gold, cutoff grade of 0.16 grams per ton gold. Take us through the resource, and these drill results, well, they're all above at least that cutoff grade, and many of them are much higher than even the 0.76 grams per ton.
Yeah, exactly. So, and 0.76 is a very high grade for an oxide gold deposit because La Colorada is an existing operation that's been around for a long time with excellent gold recoveries. The cutoff grade's quite low because you're not paying for new infrastructure. You're just getting on and operating the mine after you've paid back all your initial capital early in the mine life. So La Colorada's always been a good profit generator. The problem for the previous owners is they took the capital away from the project to try and fund the Canadian mine build and weren't reinvesting in the future. So it's effectively new capital to catch up on the stripping of the pit that was never done historically. And we're demonstrating that there's going to be even more gold than the 312,000 ounce reserve at Creston. How big that is, we'll know by the middle of the year when we complete the feasibility, and we'll, more importantly, know how big of an impact it has on the economics. It's clearly going to improve them by both increasing production and decreasing upfront capital.
So this drill program that's ongoing, it's 12,500 meters. Is this going to be enough drilling to move this waste material into a significant classification for a resource update?
Yes, we're about halfway through the program, and in the updated feasibility study, this will all be classified. The material that justifies converting will be classified as a reserve. So it's a very aggressive program. 5 rigs is a lot. I don't think the project's seen that for nearly 10 years at least, if not longer. So it will absolutely definitively give us the amount of the material that was considered waste that will actually be paying ore.
So is this expanding the pit, or is it simply converting this material that's already more or less within the known pit?
That's the power. It's converting waste within the pit. The financial models we have assumes that this gets moved anyway. if this is actually economic, it has such a big impact for us. So, no, it's about converting material assumed to have no value into having quite significant value in the shallow parts of the deposit.
So does that mean even narrow intercepts still move the needle then? It's still a net positive, even if it's a narrow intercept or even a low grade intercept?
Yeah, and anything that has the ability to pay for the cost of moving it. It's about between $2 and $2.40 a ton, depending on how deep you are in the pit. So if there's more than that in terms of gold in the material, it'll go on the leach pad and mean that that ton has a zero or a positive cost, whereas previously it was assumed to have a negative cost. It's a pretty powerful multiplier in terms of the economics of expanding the Colorado.
Okay, so this is all about the drilling in this waste material, but there's also a note here that some of the deeper intercepts, which were high grade, this shows potential to then expand the pit. Can you explain this potential?
So bigger picture, so most of the drilling is in the shallow part, in the upper sort of 100 meters. There's also some drilling in sort of the lower part of the pit, because all of the pit's going to be pushed back, if you can visualize that. And so that's not going to impact the immediate years of mine life, but it is going to add total reserves that will be mined out of the Creston expansion. And one of the more interesting things we see is there's a lot of broad low grade intercepts, but you also see some results, 4 to 5 meters at 9 to 10 grams per ton. We're seeing evidence of veins that will potentially can support underground mining, particularly deeper at La Colorada. So I suspect we would ultimately look at moving La Colorada from open pit to underground beyond these expansions. And I think these results they've given us the encouragement to do a little more drilling in this area to look at some of the grades that could support underground mining, which I think will be the future beyond the current expansion at La Colorada.
So how much more work is needed and what's the time frame for then looking at this potential underground component?
Yeah, to be very clear, this drilling is focused on everything that will fall into the expanded pit at Creston. Once we've got that bedded down and we deliver the feasibility study on that, then we can start to look bigger picture. Under at least two of the pits, the Creston pit and the Grand Central pit at Colorado, there's appearing to be very good evidence for underground potential. So we'll make sure we get the expansion locked away first, and then we'll ultimately look at what the underground potential could be. But very clearly, these kind of results have the potential to support that future for the asset.
Okay, I want you to dive a little bit more into this expansion decision. I pulled a quote from the news release out that really just talks about the drill program. It's to finalize the feasibility study, as you've talked about, for mid this year, and then to make this expansion decision on La Colorada to 50,000 to 100,000 ounces per year of annual production. That's a wide range. What should we expect? What is possible in terms of that expansion then?
Yeah, so we know from the technical report that we put out a couple of weeks that we've got a 6 year mine life ahead of us with La Colorada with a reinvestment to expand the Creston pit. And if we do that, it will produce from the Creston pit a range from just under 50,000 ounces to 85,000 ounces. So we've already got the reserve to support that production range. Right now, we're drilling because we think we can improve on that, particularly at the front end, which is why it's so exciting for us.
So, Charles, what are you producing currently at the Creston pit then? Just to get it in context of how big of an expansion this could be.
Yeah, so right now we're producing from a stockpile very close to and on the side of the Creston pit. We expect to produce about 20,000 ounces out of that total, the bulk of that coming this year. And we expect to then start stripping back and expanding the Creston pit. And as I touched on, that'll expand production into that 50 to just under 100,000 ounce a year range. That's all supported by the technical reports we've put out. We think that we can further improve. So right now, we're not working in the Creston pit. We're taking material from low-grade stockpiles. Mid this year, we'll make the decision to move in and expand that pit.
Any major costs associated that we should know about with that pit expansion, however much you decide to expand it?
Yes, so the technical report we put out shows it's got 53 million capital, but read through to approximately 120 million right now required to expand that pit over about a 4 year period. And that's the reason that we've got the rigs turning because of how big shallow ounces directly come off that capital cost. So that's why we didn't pull the trigger immediately. we think we can further reduce that number, like materially reduce that number, because we're already assuming in the model that you've got to move that waste, as we touched on before. So anytime you get paid or you make a profit from it, it can have a massive impact to that study. So watch for the FS to materially reduce that required capital and increase production, therefore the overall economic benefit of the project. It stands at $2,600 gold at about a similar 120 million NPV. We think we can change that notably with this extra production from the current drill program. And the proof of that will come in late June, very early July, when we update this study.
Okay, and again, you want more information on some of those technical reports, again, listen to that last interview that Charles and I had. Charles, let's also talk permitting in Mexico. Big picture, we're starting to see some permits being issued in Mexico. Talk to us about what's happening in Mexico, the boots on the ground view of what permits are being issued, and then how that could possibly carry over to Heliostar, especially on maybe even this project.
Yeah, I think more broadly speaking, you saw the new president come in October and state that she was going to take a more pragmatic view to industry in Mexico. Mining was going to benefit particularly from that, given how difficult the previous president had made things. And so what you've seen in January is a number of new open pit permits to Peñoles, a very positive impact with the Canadian company Alamos Gold getting an expansion permit to their Mulatos project this week. So you're starting to see a return to sort of normal processes in permitting in Mexico. And I think there's going to be a very clear trade for your listeners in a return to confidence in the quality companies being able to advance projects in Mexico. I think a clear and tradable direction ahead that we're starting to see the evidence of with permits getting granted in Mexico. And that's going to have a huge impact for us. We believe we're going to get a permit to expand and restart San Agustin. And so we think we'll get production in Q4 from that. Over the next 18 months, that'll be about 40 million of cash flow that we hadn't counted on before. So it can have a huge impact on companies like Heliostar. It's not so important for the Colorado and Ana Paula, but I think if we were to get the San Agustin permit, it could really have a positive impact to our share price.
All right, Charles, thank you very much for this update. Again, Charles Funk, President and CEO of Heliostar Metals. I'll post a link in the show notes to the Heliostar website so you all can read over this recent news. And please email me any questions you have for Charles. Charles, I really appreciate this update. Thank you.